Marcus drove in silence through the new city, trying to contain the mixture of anxiety and excitement he felt. Beside him, Jasmine looked out the window, observing the streets, the houses, and the details of a place they would soon call home. After so many struggles, so many barriers, they had finally made it. This was a new chapter in their lives. The change wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. A new beginning lay ahead of him. But something felt off. As they passed a police car parked at the corner, Marcus noticed two officers inside staring at his car in a way he knew all too well: suspicion. They followed him with their eyes as he slowly drove by. His instincts kicked in immediately, a silent alert Marcus had learned to heed over the years. He said nothing to Jasmine, but he could feel the tension rising in his own shoulders. Seconds later, the patrol car's headlights came on, followed by the sound of the siren. "Pull over," shouted a voice from the car's loudspeaker. Marcus sighed, heart racing. "Seriously?" he muttered. He glanced quickly at Jasmine, who was already tense, and pulled the car over. It wasn't the first time he'd been stopped for no apparent reason, and a part of him knew it wouldn't be the last. The two officers got out of the car in a hurry, their faces full of arrogance, and something else Marcus recognized immediately: prejudice. One of them, a middle-aged white man with a stiff, intimidating posture, approached the car without so much as a greeting. "License and registration now," he demanded, his voice dry and dripping with contempt. Marcus remained calm even as his stomach turned. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but he also knew that being polite and proper wasn't always enough in these situations. "Of course, officer," he said, pulling out his wallet and handing over the documents. The officer snatched them without thanks, flipping through them quickly without even looking at Marcus. "Where are you coming from?" asked the second officer, a younger man with the same disrespectful tone. "We're moving here," Marcus answered, trying to keep his voice neutral, though he couldn't hide the irritation bubbling under the surface. The younger cop let out a short, mocking laugh. "Moving, huh? To where exactly?" He gave Jasmine a bold, lingering look, his eyes filled with groundless suspicion, as if she were hiding something. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He knew what was really going on. This wasn't about where he was going or coming from. It was about who he was, or more precisely how he looked. The first officer looked back at the documents, then at Marcus again. "This your car? Looks kinda expensive for someone like you." The words were said casually, but the venom was in the undertone. Jasmine clenched her fists, but Marcus discreetly held her hand, calming her. "Yes, it's mine. Is there a problem with that?" Marcus replied, staring directly into the officer's eyes. The officer looked away, annoyed by Marcus's firmness. The younger officer walked around the car and approached Jasmine. "Get out of the car," he ordered, without even glancing at Marcus, as if he hadn't said anything. Jasmine hesitated, her eyes seeking Marcus's. He nodded slightly, knowing resistance could make things worse. She got out, and the officer began searching her unnecessarily, almost as if he wanted to prove a point. Marcus didn't say anything, yet. He was waiting for the right moment to act. "Got anything illegal with you?" asked the older cop while rummaging through the documents without really paying attention. "Someone like you driving a car like this? Doesn't look right. What are you doing around here?" Marcus gripped the steering wheel tightly, feeling the weight of the injustice grow. "We're moving. I don't see a reason for this kind of stop." The officer laughed dryly. "I do. Something doesn't add up here." He glanced at his partner, who seemed to be enjoying himself while inspecting the trunk. "People like you always have something to hide." "People like me?" Marcus finally asked, his voice a bit firmer than he intended. The officer paused, staring at him for a moment as if deciding whether the reply was worth the trouble. "Don't get smart with me, man. You don't want to cause trouble here," the younger cop said, slamming the trunk shut and stepping toward Marcus, towering over him. "Out of the car. Now." Jasmine looked at him with concern, but Marcus nodded. He got out slowly, keeping his hands visible, though his patience was running thin. As he stood up, the older cop stepped forward, almost chest to chest with Marcus. "If you're clean, why are you so nervous?" the officer provoked, clearly trying to shake him. Marcus took a deep breath, looking around. The sun was setting, and some neighbors were peeking out their windows, drawn by the commotion. He knew every word he spoke from that point forward would matter. "Officers," he began, his voice steady, "there's no reason for this stop. You have no justification to continue with this." The two officers looked at each other, surprised by Marcus's firmness, but didn't back down. The older one stepped back slightly, arms crossed, a sarcastic smirk on his face. "No justification? We'll see about that once we're done here." Marcus knew in that instant that he was on the edge of something bigger. The officer's words and actions came from a place he knew all too well. The injustice he and Jasmine were facing there on the side of that road was just a reflection of a much deeper problem, one he was determined to fight. But for now he had to stay in control. What they didn't know was that this day would change their lives, and that Marcus's fight was only just beginning. Marcus felt the weight of tension increasing as the two police officers openly humiliated him. The older one kept a sarcastic smile on his face, clearly enjoying every second of the intimidation. The younger one stepped away from Jasmine, throwing a disparaging look in her direction before turning back to Marcus. "You don't seem to understand the situation," said the older officer, stepping closer. "We ask the questions here. You just answer. Now, are you going to tell us why you're here, or do we need to take you in another way?" Marcus knew it was time to put an end to this. The disdain in the officers' voices, the abuse of power, the way they looked at him and Jasmine, it all struck him deeply. He had endured too much over the years, from suspicious looks to stops like this one, and he had reached his limit. This time he had something those officers didn't expect: the truth about who he really was. He raised his head, staring into the older man's eyes. "You want to know who I am? It's time you found out." The two officers laughed, clearly dismissing anything Marcus might say. The younger one shook his head with scorn. "Oh, you're going to impress us now, is that it?" Marcus remained calm. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, and the officers, conditioned by arrogance, stepped forward as if expecting him to pull out something dangerous. Hey, what do you think you're doing?" the older one yelled, hand going to his belt. With controlled movements, Marcus slowly pulled out his ID wallet and held it out in front of them, opening it so they could see. The moment the officer's eyes landed on the badge and the title engraved there, the change was immediate. The arrogance on their faces vanished like smoke in the wind. The younger one blinked several times, trying to process what he was seeing. The older one froze, his sarcastic smile completely gone. What is this?" the younger one stammered. Marcus took a step forward, still maintaining the calm he had cultivated over years in tense situations. "I'm Marcus Foster," he said, his voice as firm as steel. "And you've just made a serious mistake. I'm the new chief of police for this district." The two officers stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. The confidence and control they had just minutes ago were shattered in seconds. The older officer opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Jasmine, who had been silent, watching everything from nearby, now stepped closer to Marcus. She looked at the officers, who clearly didn't know how to react. Chief of police?" the younger one finally murmured, finding his voice. We didn't know. This was a misunderstanding." Marcus raised a hand, cutting him off. "Misunderstanding?" He looked directly at both of them. "You pulled me over for no reason, humiliated me in front of my wife, treated me like a criminal, and now you want to call this a misunderstanding?" "No. This was an abuse of power. This was prejudice." The older one, still stunned, began to mumble. "Sir. Chief, we didn't mean, we apologize." That word, apologize, sounded hollow to Marcus. Apologies weren't enough to erase what had happened. They weren't enough for all the others who faced abuse like this without the same chance to defend themselves. Marcus knew that if he let it go, they'd do it again, to someone else, maybe someone who wouldn't be as fortunate. He looked at the officers with a serious expression. "Apologies won't fix this. What you did today can't be undone with empty words. I could let this go, accept your apology and move on, but that wouldn't be justice. You'll answer for what you've done." The silence that followed was suffocating. The two officers exchanged nervous glances, now understanding their careers were hanging by a thread. The older one tried to speak again, but his voice trembled. "Sir, please? There's no need to take this further. We were just doing our job." Marcus shook his head, disappointed. "Doing your job by humiliating honest citizens? Making assumptions based on nothing but prejudice?" He took a deep breath and gave the verdict that had already been decided in his mind. "We're going to the station. Now, I'm filing an official report against you, and you will answer for it." The officers' faces went pale, and for the first time since the scene began, they seemed to truly grasp the gravity of the situation. Marcus turned to Jasmine, who nodded with a slight smile of support. She knew he was doing the right thing. The officers, on the other hand, were visibly panicking. The younger one began to protest, trying to plead for mercy. "Sir, please? We made a mistake. It doesn't have to be like this." Marcus looked at him, his voice calm but unwavering. "You made your choices. Now you'll face the consequences." The officers returned to their vehicle, their expressions defeated and humiliated. Marcus and Jasmine got back into their car and followed the patrol unit to the station. The ride was silent but heavy with a tension that wouldn't be easily forgotten. Marcus knew this was just the beginning. He was determined not only to hold those two men accountable but also to fight for something greater, real, deep change in the system. When they arrived at the station, he stepped out of the car with firm steps. There was no hesitation in his eyes, only certainty that he was doing the right thing. The officers followed him, heads down, aware that they were now facing the very justice they had sworn to uphold, but had betrayed. Marcus walked into the station and up to the desk. He looked at the officer in charge with determination. "I want to file a report. 2 officers abused their authority today." And so, without looking back, Marcus began the fight that would define not only his leadership but his commitment to justice. While Marcus waited at the station, the atmosphere seemed to carry an electric tension. The officers involved in the incident, now sitting in a corner, whispered to each other, visibly uncomfortable. Jasmine, beside Marcus, gave him an encouraging smile, but she knew he wasn't seeking comfort. Marcus couldn't avoid the weight of the memories flooding his mind, years watching a system that was meant to protect and serve but so often did the opposite. The commanding officer of the station, a heavy-set man with stern features named Captain Rivas, approached. He recognized Marcus immediately and extended his hand, though his face showed surprise at seeing him there. "Chief Foster, I wasn't expecting you today. How can I help?" he asked, his deep voice echoing across the room. Marcus took a deep breath before speaking. "I want to file a report against 2 of your officers, Captain. They stopped me without cause, abused their authority, and showed unacceptable prejudice. This cannot be tolerated under any circumstances, especially not in a district I intend to lead with integrity." The captain blinked, clearly shaken. He looked at the 2 officers in the corner of the room, who now seemed smaller than ever. "I understand, sir. We'll take the necessary measures. Would you like to speak in my office?" Marcus nodded. Before following, he looked at Jasmine, who reassured him with a brief nod. In Rivas's office, the walls were lined with certificates and photographs, but the heavy air made any decoration seem meaningless. "Rivas, I know you understand how serious this is. That kind of behavior isn't just a stain on the department, it's a danger to the very people we swore to protect," Marcus said, his voice firm. "I want those officers suspended immediately while we conduct an investigation." Rivas leaned back in his chair, seeming to weigh each word before responding. "Chief, I understand your point. I won't defend their behavior, but immediate suspensions could cause waves in the department. We're already struggling with morale." Marcus raised a hand, cutting him off. "I'm not concerned about their morale. I'm concerned about justice. If we sweep this under the rug, we're sending the wrong message. I want a clear statement. We tolerate mistakes, but we do not tolerate abuse." Rivas finally nodded, realizing that arguing would be pointless. "Understood, sir. I'll take the necessary measures." When Marcus left the office, he felt the eyes of everyone in the station on him. He knew he was challenging a deeply rooted culture, but he also knew he had no choice. This wasn't just about him or Jasmine, it was about all the people who had suffered in silence. That night, Marcus and Jasmine sat in their living room. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but filled with unspoken thoughts. Jasmine finally broke the silence. "You know this is just the beginning, right?" she said, her voice soft but full of concern. "There's going to be a lot of resistance. Not just from within the department but from the community too. Not everyone will understand why you're doing this." Marcus nodded slowly, looking down at the glass of water in his hands. "I know. But if I don't do this now, when will I? And if we don't change things, who will? The system is broken, Jasmine. And even if it's a fight I can't fully win, I have to try." Jasmine smiled faintly, admiring her husband's determination. "So what's the next step?" "Tomorrow I'll gather the department. I want to speak to all the officers face to face. They need to hear from me what the new standard will be. And I want to open a direct channel with the community. People need to know that I'm on their side, not above them." Jasmine took his hand and squeezed it gently. "I know it's an enormous task, but you're not alone. We're in this together." The next morning, Marcus walked into the department's meeting room. All the officers were present, including Rivas and the 2 who had been suspended. The tension was palpable, but Marcus remained firm. He looked at the faces before him, some curious, others defiant. "I gathered you all here because something needs to change," he began, his voice echoing through the room. Yesterday, I was a victim of something that should never happen to any citizen, especially not coming from us. But this isn't a story about me. It's about how we can do better. How we must do better. He paused, letting his words sink in. I'm not here to hunt down guilty parties or ruin careers. I'm here to build something we can all be proud to be a part of. But that will require something from each of us. Responsibility, empathy, and respect. And it starts today. The room remained silent, but something shifted in many of the officers' eyes. Marcus knew that earning their trust and support would take time, but this was an important first step. He knew the journey ahead would be long and full of challenges, but it was a fight worth fighting. As he left the meeting, he felt the weight of his actions, but also the hope that he was planting seeds for something greater. The future was still uncertain, but Marcus Foster was ready to face it head-on.